and welcome to Rhythm Connect, the official podcast of the Rhythm Foundation. I'm Umayal Eswaran, your host, and this is the show where we have conversations with people who are driving change in their communities and helping to empower and transform the lives of people in small but meaningful ways. On today's segment, my guest is Dr. Madhavi Panda, the founder and director of the Parinaama Development Foundation in India, which is dedicated to maximizing social and economic impact by engaging, enabling, and empowering rural communities through social mobilization, capacity building, and more. Parinaama has also been a long-time partner of Rhythm Foundation in India, where our project focuses on the economic empowerment of rural women through micro-enterprises. And I am proud to say that this project has helped empower over 10,000 women in several rural communities in India. In today's episode of Rhythm Connect, I hope to find out more about what drives Dr. Madhavi, the lessons she has learned in her journey with Parinaama, and her insights and observations about working in rural communities. Thank you for joining me today, Dr. Madhavi.
Thank you, Datanshri, for having me over. I'm excited to be here with you for having this conversation regarding Parinaama's work in India. It's been a long journey for us, starting in 2012 until now. It's been a decade of work in the rural communities of India. Parinaama was established as a platform for economic and social impact, targeting the marginalized communities in India.
Can you tell us what was your passion? How did you start the foundation? How this all began?
My background as a demographer and as a researcher, there was always this gap within the research domain wherein I felt that there's much more to do beyond research. The action interventions was something that I felt is a significant step in helping the poor. So back of my mind, I always had in me that I wasn't doing enough as a researcher, because there is only that much that you can do within your power. So I felt that there has to be a platform that helps me go down to the grassroots, meet the women, be there with them, hand holding, listening to their stories. The narrative is much more different when you are with the women. And that kind of was missing in my earlier avatar as a researcher. That's how I set up the platform in order to shed those shackles within which I had to operate in other organizations. I worked with a range of international nonprofit organizations and bilateral organizations in India. And I realized that, there is a huge disconnect with what I was doing and what needs to be done. So in brief, I think this is what led me to set up the platform so that I have that freedom to work with the most vulnerable communities. We started off with very tiny health camps and addressing women's health issues in the early days of our organization. Having worked in the rural areas, looking at the women's struggles with reproductive health, child health issues, we realized that there is much more that can be done in order to bring about improvement in the health of the women. There is significant economic issues that deter them from availing health services. That is where the whole objective of creating the economic impact came into being. We started off with a lot of programs in skill development, capacity building, and mobilization, basically the social mobilization issues that drive the women towards income and earnings so that they are stable by themselves. And once there is economic stability, we believe that it helps them avail health services, helps them negotiate better, and have a bargaining ground within households and thereof within communities. Thus, Parinama has come a full circle where we started on a range of issues to maximize the impact.
What is it like working with partners on the ground, or even in communities that you work with? I mean, do you see setbacks? Do they open arms and welcome you into those communities? Because when you go into these communities or villages, there are certain cultural values and or whatever they believe in. Have you faced challenges when you go in and try to do work with these communities?
Of course, I think all of us go through this journey. Those of us who are in the social sector go through this journey. And I'm sure even on an individual basis, none of us would want strangers to come into our homes or, come into our communities and tell us that what you're doing is not great and I have something better to offer. So you would have your doubts and your fears. Why these strangers are coming and telling us what to do. So we are not welcome. In the first instance, we're definitely not welcome. So that has been one of the biggest challenges, in fact, to visit the villages, to meet people, even if they're the most needy communities. There is a whole ecosystem out there within which they function. And because they've grew up there, they're comfortable with it. And as an external agent, when we go and try to do things differently, tell them to do things differently, we're not welcome, certainly. Again, we have to start working with the menfolk. We work in a very patriarchal structures in India. And as the remote you go, the more you see these patriarchal norms and customs being followed. So the women folk are also kind of accept that this is their life and this is their future. So they do not picture anything outside that box. So, and the men folk are the front. When you go to any community, in fact, it's the men who step forward. The woman doesn't come out of the house. So you have to address the men. Why do you want to talk to the women? What do you want from her? Why should she go for your training program? How do you think she would travel all the way from here to your training program? How does she go alone without a male escort? There's so many pertinent questions that are asked of us. And we are accosted at every twist and turn I can think of. So all these questions keep coming at us. And we have these small little one-to-one interface meetings with the people, and men separately, women separately, the youth separately. So we have all these categories of people with whom we work. And it's a long journey. It's a huge challenge to go step by step. I can also say that these are baby steps, one after the other. And then, over a period of time, that is when some of the barriers are broken and it's a long journey that we had gone through.
So you do say that it does take time even to build that relationship with whether
Absolutely.
It's communities or that people that we are going into, right? Because any impact we want to make, we want to change the mindset, I think we also need to put in that kind of time and effort. I mean, that means with any relationships as well, it is the same, right? You have to go in, you have to build a trust, and they have to know what your intentions are and why you are here, right? Because sometimes they tend to think that you're just here for a short time and therefore they don't trust that you're here for their well-being, but rather it's something that you want to take away from the communities, right? I mean, which is what we face, and I'm sure you face the same thing. Building that trust takes a long time. Then it's easier to then after that, then I think more than half the work is done once they start trusting you, being able to go into the community and work. Now with your kind of, let's say, the time and effort that you have put and your time with Parinaama Foundation, has there been a time in your journey that when you have setbacks, or if you have had setbacks and you've thought about this is enough, I don't want to do it, or have you had that? And what if you had, and what made you change, or rather look back and say, no, I want to move forward? I mean, Have you had those moments? Because, as human beings, sometimes we do.
Yeah, it's a given.
Yeah.
When any venture that you begin, there are setbacks, and one goes with the flow, and or we try to go with the flow. In our case, because these are human relationships and human bonds that you are trying to make in unknown areas, so there have been lots of tears, lots of fears, lots of setbacks in many ways. And demotivation is a very small, it's a very light word, I would say.
Yeah.
Yes, there have been lots of moments like that. And it is extremely difficult to overcome those moments. You mentioned trust quite a bit.
Yeah.
There have been lots of issues with broken trust. And broken trust, believe me, is the worst thing that one has to face.
Yes.
Especially when, the trust is broken because you have an expectation and that's not being fulfilled, or you're being cheated,
Yeah.
you felt deceived, you felt cheated. And that is a very, very difficult thing to overcome. And it has taken a lot of pain, I would say, to overcome those mental, the trauma, I would say. Broken trust has been one of the biggest challenges to address. How I keep going on is just single-minded, persuasion of the same goals, dreams that we have. There is this burning desire to keep doing good, and that's what keeps me going. The other thing is, I think the sooner you realize that there is a fuzziness to all this whole thing, this whole dream, the portrait is not clear. We know the pictures are not going to be high definition. The sooner you accept this fuzziness in our relationship, the better it is for us. And that's how we overcome each and every fear within us. And that has been my way of resolving the issue of overcoming these fears, the deepest fears, I might say.
Because this is something I guess the listeners would also want to know, because it's easier to look at all these bigger foundations and like what you're doing. You're empowering these rural communities, the women out there, right? But sometimes, most of the time, people don't see the challenges that we as organizations face, because like you said, when you're working with human beings, it's I think we are the most complicated being in this world, and so in the area of work that you and I are in, there's no choice to as in ignore people or not work with people, because that is the main part of what we do, wanting to empower or impact or wanting to see a transformation. It all involves people, in all forms, in all walks of life.
Right.
Yeah. So it's how we have to pull ourselves together, in order to keep moving, because there's always going to be obstacles. There's always going to be these emotional things that's going to keep coming in, right? So we are always facing these challenges. Going beyond all this, all these challenges or things that you have faced, what would you say in your journey the biggest or the most memorable takeaway?
As we continue to interact with the poor communities, I learn a lot from them on a daily basis. One of the biggest takeaway, if I were to mention, is the resilience that the women show, because their troubles and their journeys are much more tougher than mine. I don't really have that kind of stories, if I were to say, as compared to them.
Yes.
And I see them coming to our programs every day with a smile, despite all their issues at home, the domestic chores, and many other issues at home. We also work in areas where there's a lot of social exclusion. And, battling all of those issues within the household, and then stepping out within the community, within the village, and then coming to our programs with a smile. That is something that I have learned over the years. And when they are able to do it, why not me? That is something that keeps me going. And that's the biggest takeaway, the resilience, the coping strategies that they have, and kind of putting all of that aside and still stepping out of their homes, coming, looking for that brighter future and trying to realize dreams, if not for themselves, for their children, for their children's future. So these are things that keep me on my toes as well. So there are lots of other things like the humility, the compassion that we see in the communities, caring for each other. So those are the things that I carry forward, and those faces keep appearing in front of me every day, and that's what keeps me going.
That's one of the things that I talk about, that I say that we, in a sense, that we think we are helping them, but in actual fact I think they teach us as well, because we tend to take everything for granted, because when you go into these communities you realize how much that what we have and we take for granted, they are suffering to even have it. Like one thing that we have, it takes them a great effort.
Absolutely.
So I think this is something that people need to understand, in these underserved communities, and what they go through, in terms of the challenges that they have, like to get through one day. Now, I know that you work with these women, and and you continue to work with these rural women. You can really see the transformation in them, and the fact is that we want them to empower more women. Do you see that happening in the communities?
Definitely. We have tons of stories around women doing better for themselves through Parinama, with Parinama, walking along
Yeah.
with us. So there have been a lot of transformations happening. Sometimes it's just small steps that enable them to achieve quite a bit. I can actually narrate one of the stories, or short instances of where one of our beneficiaries, we have this system of covering the head in order to, it's again a patriarchal norm and custom that's in our region. But one of the women wants to be an artist. So the teacher said, how are you going to become an artist with this veil? So you have to remove the veil in order to see, in order to visualize, in order to be creative. You have to open your eyes. Open your eyes not just to the creative activity, but also open your eyes to the world.
Yes.
Because you've got to put it up out there. This is a very small step, a very small positive energy, I might say, which has transformed this lady into a very leading artist. And now that is erasing decades of patriarchy in one small step. It is a challenge to the men to remove the veil, and being able to walk in the village itself is a big, giant leap, I might say. So these are small little things that we enable the women to do in our own small way, and which bring in a lot of encouragement for the other women around. So we have a cluster of artists with us who have crossed all those barriers in order to change themselves and change the society.
Yeah.
So very small steps, but then maximizing the impact.
Yeah.
So we have lots of stories of this kind of
Yeah, it's
thing
amazing,
there.
isn't it? When we see the transformation, that's very fulfilling. I mean, you don't have to see hundreds. You just want to see one real change. That kind of gives you an assurance that you are in the right direction. And what is your vision or hope for an ideal and a sustainable world, you think?
Well, once you empower women, the next generation gets empowered automatically. At least we believe so, that we have been helping not just the women, but the mothers, mothers-in-law, and the next generation as well. In our programs, we have a range of women. When we say women, they range from 18 to 50, and some even beyond 50. So we provide an opportunity, a platform for creating that economic and social impact together for this whole age group. I'm not really a messiah to give any message as such,
Yeah.
but I feel that, once the women are able to step out of their homes and engage with us, that itself is an empowering activity for a lot of women. So that is the first step that we're undertaking. So I feel that, the next generation is going to definitely be better off than this generation we're addressing. So it's a intergenerational impact that is happening on the ground.
I think what my takeaway, I think, from this conversation with you is that whatever we do in communities, we do it in small steps because we want to see the change. We want to see the transformation in these communities. We want them to be independent, and to come out and say they can be part of the society too, and they can be independent. And in that journey with the communities, you see them becoming resilient. You see them accepting, that they have to change. The transformation need to happen. So overall, it is about, societies around us seeing that how important it is for us to engage with communities. And because I think as human beings, if we don't help one another, then the societies are not going to flourish. And you talked about the generational gap. You talked about the next generation as well, waking up and wanting to be different as well, and doing the right thing. So these are the takeaways. And I think with women coming from a patriarchal society, I think if it's going to take us another 132 years or 135 years, I think we can shorten that gap if women wake up and wanting to, change themselves and become independent and self-motivated. And so it is about communities coming together and rising and to make a difference in the society. So I thank you, Dr. Madhavi, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And to our audience, join us again next time for another episode of Rhythm Connect for more interesting conversations with change makers, social advocates, and the real people behind the causes you care about. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to be notified when we have a new episode. And follow Rhythm Foundation, that's RYTHM, on Facebook and Instagram to learn more about the work we do around the world. Thanks for tuning in today, and I'll see you next time.